Guys, we got one more segment, and it's NFL related. And this was about a trade that actually did happen. And that was that the Dolphins traded Jaylen Waddle, their star wide receiver, to the Broncos. So the Dolphins go from having two speedy wide receivers in Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle to now, starting next season, they likely will not have either of them. I believe, off the top of my head, Tyreek Hill, Kevin, he technically still is a Dolphin. That hasn't ended yet.
No, they let him go. They released him.
Oh, yes. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it because I was kind of just thinking out loud, but I remembered, yes, and that's when he said thank God or whatever. Anyways, okay, so I kind of contradicted myself there, but nevertheless, Dolphins go from having two speedy wide receivers to now having none after releasing Tyreek Hill, trading Jaylen Waddle. And so, according to Adam Schefter, the trade is official. The physical has been passed. That's important context after what happened with Max Crosby, as the Dolphins have acquired a 2026 first-round pick, which is 30th overall, and a 2026 third-round pick, 94th overall, and a 2026 fourth-round pick, 130th overall. So without getting into the details of exactly which picks, a 2026 first, third, and fourth from the Broncos in exchange for wide receiver Jaylen Waddle, and a 2026 fourth-round pick, which is 111th overall. So basically, they swapped 2026 fourth-round picks. The Broncos moved up 19 picks, but they also traded their first-round pick, which is number 30, completely different than number 14, as we were talking about with the Ravens, and also a 2026 third-round pick. So, Keith, I'm going to toss this to you first. What was your reaction to the Dolphins trading Jaylen Waddle to the Broncos?
I was a little surprised given the context that Malik Willis had just gotten there. Obviously, they had gotten rid of Tyreek. They were going to need as much ammo as possible. Now, they have come out and said that Achane is not going to be traded. Adam Schefter did report that today. They are going to keep Devon Achane. He's not going to be traded. For the Broncos, I was not surprised because obviously, Bo had gotten hurt in the divisional game against Buffalo. He did not play in the championship, but the offense lacked juice when it came to the deep ball. Now, the Broncos obviously wanted to add another vertical threat. Nix was an 83.1 total QBR on deep throws. That ranked 19th out of 28 qualifying passers last year. He ranked 24th on 11.6 yards per deep attempt. So a lot of that has to do with maybe the lack of resources. Now, they do have guys that are stepping up like Troy Franklin. Cortland Sutton will likely be the second number one in that regard. But Jaylen Waddle has averaged 15.6 yards per deep target over that same time. He hasn't come close since 2022 to replicating the 1,300-yard season since. He hasn't had 1,000 yards receiving or more in the 4 years since he has had that season. A lot of that has to do with the concept that Tua has been inconsistent. The offense hasn't been as fluid. They were game planning for him. But I think the Broncos obviously wanted to add a larger deep threat. And again, he can fly, man. If there's one thing Jaylen Waddle can do, he can run and he can get open. And I think Sean Payton is going to really, obviously he's not calling the plays anymore, but I think he'll tinker with the concept of getting Jaylen involved. They're going to want to have bigger plays down the field. They're going to be in a division where you have to score points. That's just the way it's going to be. They're going to have Kansas City still there. I still think the Chargers will have a boom season next year. That's for the NFL preview down the line. But they're going to be in a division where you got to throw up points. And that's just the simple route of it. For the Dolphins, obviously, they're probably going to try to tear this thing down. And they're going to try to rebuild. I think Stephen Ross has it in his mind. They're going to probably look at the layout, of their division, let alone the AFC. Bills are still relevant. Patriots obviously have gotten better. The Jets are the Jets, but they need to tear this thing down. Now, they have Malik Willis. I think Malik will have a good quality span for them. Now they're bringing in all these guys from Green Bay who have seen this guy come to work every year. But I think the Dolphins are the mindset. We need to get as many picks as possible. We need to see and rebuild and get younger. So I like what the Dolphins are doing because they're tearing down that old part of what they once were, and they're trying to establish a new identity. And I think getting a second and a fourth for a guy like Waddle was a really good call for them going forward.
I agree. And Kevin, before I get your reaction, I just wanted to mention the impact that Jaylen Waddle. I have Tyreek Hill on the mind after my mistake, but 5 years in Miami for Jaylen Waddle after being drafted out of Alabama. He had 5,039 receiving yards, which ranks 6th in franchise history, 373 receptions, which ranks 8th, 26 receiving touchdowns, ranks 8th again, and he had the most receiving yards by a Dolphin in his first 5 years of his career. So he definitely left a legacy down in South Beach. But what was your reaction to this trade, Kevin?
You guys think they told Malik Willis they're going to blow the shit up?
Shit, I think he didn't care because he was getting paid.
Yeah, the money.
He would have got the money anywhere. He could have went to Arizona.
Check cleared the same way.
He could have went to Arizona. He could play for the Jets. Like I mean, I know we're talking about the bottom of the bottom, but it's like Malik Willis. It's Malik Willis, Devon Achane, Malik Washington, Jalen Tolbert, Tutu Atwell, and Greg Dulcich. This team isn't gonna be good, and we all watch college ball. You're telling me if they get a top 3 pick, they're gonna turn away from an Arch Manning, a Julian Sand, Dante Moore, Lenora Sellers, DJ Lagway, CJ Carr, Brendan Sorsby. Like, there's a lot of quarterbacks coming in this class. And this might bite Malik Willis in the ass because he could play good and they just suck. But they look at a guy with a rookie contract and say, we're already rebuilding anyway. Shaun just mentioned they want all these picks. So what is this going to look like if they go 2-15, 1-16?
It'll be interesting, but I do think the reason why he decided to go to Miami is not only to get paid, not only because of the location that he's now in, going from frigid Green Bay to now very warm Miami, but also I think that just his familiarity with all the Packers personnel that moved down south to Miami, including the Dolphins' new head coach. I feel like that's the reason why, is because he already had that familiarity with working with all of them in Green Bay, but then also like he was their guy and he was their primary target in free agency, and they probably made him feel wanted and desired. And so that's why I think that Malik Willis ultimately decided to go to the Dolphins. On the Broncos side of things, a team that made it to the AFC Championship game, as Keith was talking about, as they will compete in the AFC West. I'm really happy for the Broncos. This is a great move for them. Courtland Sutton, he really emerged, but now for him to play alongside a Jaylen Waddle, this Broncos team, they're going to be right back up there in terms of not only competing in the AFC West, and I think that the AFC West is going to come down to the Chargers and the Broncos again this year. And the only reason why I'm sleeping on the Chiefs is it depends when Patrick Mahomes is going to come back. And as we know, it's very well noted on this podcast, I'm the president and founding member of the Justin Fields fan club. He was traded to the Chiefs this past week for a swap of 7th-round picks, and I was very happy about that move for Justin Fields, but Justin Fields isn't going to lead the Chiefs to the playoffs. He's a placeholder for them until Patrick Mahomes comes back. And so it'll be interesting to see how Jaylen Waddle performs on the Broncos, but it was time for a fresh start. It was time for the Broncos to really make a big move like this to contend and compete for a championship, as they were 2 wins away from this year, which really surprised all of us except for Keith. But I think it was just time for the Dolphins to completely blow it up. That's why they released Tyreek Hill. They've now traded Jaylen Waddle. They moved on from Tua Tagovailoa, who's now a member of the Atlanta Falcons. And so it all makes sense. And this trade didn't surprise me as much as the Max Crosby trade, which ultimately ended up not even happening. So that's the most interesting thing. That's going to do it for episode 185. But before we go, I wanted to get some final thoughts from Kevin and Keith. Kevin, go ahead.
So you mentioned with Malik Willis wanting to go over there for the court with the GM and the guys that kind of won it from day one. Just remind you guys, these were the same guys that took Jordan Love and had him sit behind the guy he was going to replace. So, yeah, maybe they're not going to start a CJ Carr, Jordan Love, or not Jordan Love, a Julian Sand, Arch Manning, but they can say, hey, We've seen it work before. So
Kevin is cooking right now. Keith, you got some final thoughts?
This decision could come back to bite him because he's seen it firsthand how this happens.
I think it's interesting, the concept that what you see right now is a lot of the teams that are preparing to be bad next year. Like, obviously, the Jets are not going to be anywhere close to decent. And they're not giving up picks. They're stockpiling all these picks. Cleveland, we don't know what you're doing, Cleveland, but it is what it is. But a lot of these, like Kevin alluded to, a lot of GMs, a lot of scouts are banking on the concept that next year's draft class is going to be totally loaded. Moore will be there. I think Arch is going to be better next year, and he took a decent amount of steps at the end of last year. But Kevin brings up a good point, because if I'm the Dolphins and I know I'm going to be bad, why would I give Malik Willis all that money? I thought it was a good deal if they were going to keep Waddle and go after some pieces. They're not doing that. They're blowing it up, like we've all alluded to. So I'm giving Malik Willis all this money when I could just suck next year regardless and have that contract off the books, and then I'd be free to get a rookie contract on one of those quarterbacks. It's the timeline is kind of not adding up. You say you want to rebuild, but then you throw a boatload of cash at Malik Willis. I don't know what they're trying to do. Maybe if they're going to blow the whole roster up, but it is an interesting concept, because you see the bad teams that you know are going to be bad. They're not going anywhere near quarterback in free agency or trading for him, and they're stockpiling those picks. And the Dolphins, they're giving Malik Willis $40 million guaranteed. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they do, though.
My biggest takeaway from everything that Keith just said is that he very conveniently, Kevin, omitted Julian Sayin from the discussion about the quarterbacks who are going to be coming.
I heard that too.
I didn't hear that guy's name.
Moore,
who is that guy? Is that the guy that got outplayed by Carson Beck in the Cotton Bowl?
Yeah. Sorry, we can't. Yeah, they have 2 first-round draft picks off the edge.
Is that the guy that uses Jeremiah Smith and Carnell, or used Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate as a life raft until he actually had to play someone decent?
I mean,
hey, Keith, how's JJ McCarthy doing?
Through for what?
He's awful.
45 yards.
Like I told you he was going to be.
Against us? 45 passing yards? He's supposed to be the next Jesus Christ.
Well, you guys are throwing out CJ Carr as like in this loaded draft class. I mean, you can't trust a Buckeye fan as a quarterback evaluator. You just can't do that.
But we have Tom Brady, so you have to trust us.
Hey, it's better than Troy Smith. All right, we'll just start throwing out guys so we can be here all day. We want to do this. We do it.
Top 10. Okay, he'll bounce back.
Terrell Pryor sends his regards.
Not the receiver.
I was about to. I think that's exactly what I was about to say. Oh man.